Within the concealed records of the Wisconsin diocese, there rests a cache of documents that the highest echelons of the Catholic Church have labored to erase for more than 160 years. These writings chronicle the methodical vanishing of 23 devoted nuns from St. Mary's Convent on the shores of Lake Michigan between 1854 and 1862. Though church authorities have long dismissed these entries as nothing more than clerical errors and accidental misfilings, the compelling depositions of 3 separate diocesan examiners, coupled with a collection of private letters recently discovered in a sealed cavity during building restoration, reveal a true account so profoundly terrible that even seasoned chroniclers have questioned if such calculated evil could ever truly inhabit a sacred place. This is the first thorough retelling of what many believe to be the most disturbing instance of institutional religious corruption in American history, a tragedy the Church has paid vast sums to keep hidden from public knowledge. Before we proceed with the grim narrative of St. Mary's Convent, I must pause and ask, if this unfolding history already captures your attention, please consider joining our community by subscribing to our channel for more unvarnished, fact-based explorations of America's most deeply buried religious secrets. Our dedicated audience of truth seekers stretches across all 50 states. Where are you listening from tonight? Please share in the comments below. Now let us return to the isolated Wisconsin farmlands of 1854, where this somber tale first unfolded. The early morning mist lay heavy and still over the vast expanse of Lake Michigan as Bishop William Corder's official carriage passed slowly through the entrance gates of what would become the renowned St. Mary's Convent. The Catholic Church had secured the sprawling property, a magnificent former residence of a powerful lumber baron situated within 30 acres of thick, challenging woodland, with the singular aim of founding the first significant Catholic establishment in the largely non-Catholic Wisconsin territory. This strategic push was an integral part of a larger plan to embed Catholic influence in America's quickly expanding frontier regions, where established Protestant groups were rapidly consolidating their positions. The limestone manor, with its 3 towering wings and its central bell spire, offered a sharp, striking contrast to the simple, wooden churches that peppered the Wisconsin landscape. The main structure, erected in 1842, featured stern Gothic arches and narrow, watching windows that seemed to observe the surrounding countryside with cold intensity. 2 large wings extended outward. The eastern section was intended for the cloistered nuns, and the western section was designated for the future orphanage and medical wing. Just behind the main building stood a small chapel, its spire soaring above the canopy, visible for many miles across the flat, open plains of Wisconsin. The local Protestant settlers regarded the newly arrived nuns with intense distrust. Their uniform black habits and distinct Irish inflections immediately marked them as absolute outsiders in a region predominantly settled by German and Scandinavian immigrants. The residents of the area, largely practicing Lutherans and Methodists, had grown accustomed to the simple, democratic organization of their own congregations. The rigid, hierarchical nature of Catholicism, with its elaborate rituals and layers of secrecy, felt profoundly alien and deeply threatening. On the day the convent was officially consecrated, a small but vocal group gathered near the perimeter. Papists, grumbled Elijah Hoffman, a highly respected senior member of the local Lutheran community, as he watched the black-robed figures file into the chapel. They are bringing their foreign practices here. They mean to corrupt our youngsters with their image worship. His associate, Wilhelm Schmidt, concurred solemnly. My family fled Germany to escape this very Catholic oppression. Now, they have followed us even here. This intense feeling, while not unanimous, created the powerful religious tension that formed the background of the coming disaster. St. Mary's will stand as a glorious beacon of God's grace in this hostile wilderness. Bishop Corder declared to the intimate gathering of local priests and regional officials during the consecration ritual. His voice resonated throughout the newly finished chapel, where the morning light streamed through the plain stained glass, casting isolated patches of vibrant color across the wooden floorboards. Under the supreme direction of Mother Superior Catherine Murphy, this convent shall offer safe refuge to the orphaned, consolation to the widowed, and healing to the afflicted. The bishop's unmistakable Boston accent echoed from the stone walls as he presented the three women selected to head the institution: Mother Superior Catherine, Sister Elizabeth Foster, and Sister Margaret Clark, all experienced professionals from well-established Eastern convents. Mother Superior Catherine projected an imposing height in her impeccably crisp black habit. Her sharply defined features and intensely focused gaze commanded instant, total deference. At 42, she moved with the confident assurance of a woman completely comfortable wielding power. Her hands, when raised in devotion, were graceful yet visibly strong. Hand that appeared equally adept at soothing a distressed child or inflicting stern punishment on a disobedient novice. Those who met her frequently noted her eyes, an unusual, piercing pale blue that seemed to penetrate any false display. Mother Catherine comes to us with the strongest possible endorsements, the bishop continued. Her exemplary work overseeing St. Augustine's in Boston has thoroughly prepared her for the extraordinary demands of life on the religious frontier. Sister Elizabeth, 38, known for her constant nervous smile and gentle, unassuming tone, was designated to manage the orphanage. Plump and radiating a maternal warmth, with rosy cheeks and soft hands, she appeared ideally suited to the task of caring for abandoned children. When she spoke, it was always with a noticeable, subtle pause, as if she were meticulously weighing every word, a trait many observers initially interpreted as deep reflection rather than careful manipulation. Sister Margaret, 35, possessed vast, extensive knowledge of natural, herbal cures and was tasked with founding the infirmary. Tall and exceedingly thin, with a serious demeanor and unusually nimble fingers, she carried herself with the deliberate exactitude of someone who precisely measured potent remedies drop by drop. Her dark, scrutinizing eyes missed absolutely nothing, and her command of both ancient and contemporary medical science had profoundly impressed doctors in both Boston and New York. The initial community was completed by 20 younger sisters, most barely in their 20s and fresh arrivals from Ireland. They stood in rigid alignment, habit starched, heads bowed in mandated submission, as Bishop Corder offered a blessing to each by name: Sister Agnes O'Connor, Sister Bernardet Walsh, Sister Teresa Donovan, Sister Mary Collins. Young women who had left behind their ancestral homes and families to serve divine calling in a strange new land. Their expressions, while reverent during service, occasionally betrayed fleeting moments of youthful fear and uncertainty when they believed they were not under observation. The Almighty has summoned us to this wild and testing environment, Mother Catherine declared to her sisters that first evening. Candlelight threw exaggerated, moving shadows across the refectory. The comforting scent of fresh-baked bread and weak. Thin tea hung faintly in the air, and the penetrating cold of the Wisconsin autumn seeped through the thick stone walls despite the roaring fire in the massive hearth. We will encounter hardships entirely unknown to those in Eastern congregations. We will endure suspicion from people who fear our devout faith, but we shall prevail through absolute fidelity and personal sacrifice. The young nuns, utterly isolated from family and familiar places, clung to her words as if they were a lifeline in this strange, terrifying new existence. Do you truly believe the local people will ever learn to accept us? Sister Agnes whispered to Sister Bernardet as they prepared for rest that night. Their narrow sleeping pallets were positioned barely an arm's length apart in the dormitory-style sleeping area. Her voice carried a slight vibration, revealing the underlying anxiety she had concealed throughout the day. Sister Bernardet gently squeezed her hand in the absolute darkness. They were initially fearful of the Lord, too. We must demonstrate through our deeds that our intentions are solely righteous. The whispered conversation was instantly terminated by the sharp, measured sound of footsteps in the corridor. Mother Catherine performing her final check, ensuring every detail was perfect on their inaugural night. The convent rapidly settled into the punishing schedule of a fully operational religious institution. The daily cycle of prayer commenced with matins at 3 a.m, the bell tolling sharply through the pre-dawn cold, rousing the groggy nuns from warm pallets onto freezing stone floors. The continuous, low-pitched drone of Latin chanting filled the chapel 7 times a day. From those earliest prayers until Compline at 9 in the evening, that sound became as characteristic of the surrounding land as the sighing wind through the pines or the distant, mournful cries of grazing cattle. Interspersed with the prayers, the nuns managed a small sanctuary for abandoned children, cared for the ailing in a modest infirmary, and cultivated vast vegetable gardens. Their days followed an extremely rigid blueprint: prayer, physical exertion, meager meals, short recreation, and more prayer. A demanding sequence designed to rivet the mind entirely upon service and obedience, rather than personal comfort or desire. By the winter of 1854, the orphanage housed a dozen children, primarily the offspring of Irish immigrant laborers who had perished in mining or logging accidents. Sister Elizabeth oversaw their care with apparent tenderness, instructing them in fundamental literacy and numeracy alongside Catholic doctrine. On Sundays, local families occasionally visited following Mass, bringing small treats for the children and sometimes inquiring about adoption prospects. Sister Margaret's infirmary began small, but quickly garnered genuine respect among local residents. Her sophisticated knowledge of natural remedies, potent poultices for painful swelling, soothing herbal teas for acute fevers, specialized chest compresses for respiratory ailments, proved remarkably effective, particularly during the brutal Wisconsin winters when a doctor's visit required dangerous travel along snow-choked and perilous roads. Their practical self-sufficiency impressed even the most hardened non-believers, and the local attitude slowly shifted from raw suspicion to reluctant admiration. They keep to themselves entirely, but they clearly perform worthy labor, conceded Elijah Hoffman grudgingly to his fellow congregants after Sister Margaret successfully treated his grandson's persistent, hacking cough. Their particular customs are not ours, but perhaps there exists space for various paths to salvation in this enormous country. Sister Agnes O'Connor, at just 23, was one of the convent's youngest members. Her personal correspondence sent back to Ireland, now preserved in the Dublin Diocesan Repository, provides a unique glimpse into the convent's initial years, although attentive reading reveals a steadily darkening emotional tone as the months elapsed. The demands of the labor are far greater than I could have conceived, she penned in December 1854. The paper, smeared with marks that suggest actual tears, had blurred the ink. My hands are cracked and raw from washing endless linens in ice-cold water, and the chapel's stone floor feels like solid ice beneath our knees during early prayers. But Mother Catherine consistently assures us that these severe sacrifices will glorify God. Sister Elizabeth has shown exceptional kindness, helping me adjust to this strange land. She secretly brings me additional coverings on the bitterest nights and has demonstrated great patience in instructing me on the proper management of the orphans. Sister Margaret's deep knowledge saved us all during a severe fever that swept through the orphanage just last month, she continued. The poor children were consumed by such intense heat, we truly feared losing every single one. Yet, her homemade tonic of willow bark and honey successfully broke their high temperatures. I truly believe we are fulfilling God's sacred purpose here, though I must confess I still often cry myself to sleep at night, intensely missing the familiar green hills of my home. What these honest, simple letters fail to communicate, what Sister Agnes herself may have failed to fully grasp, were the incremental, deeply disturbing shifts already taking place within the walls of St. Mary's. Mother Catherine's style of governance, initially merely rigorous, had begun a slow, chilling transition toward absolute despotism. Minor deviations from the convent's rigid protocols, previously managed with gentle spoken correction, now led to increasingly brutal penances. Sister Josephine Brady's hands trembled uncontrollably as she tried to repair a rip in her habit one cold evening in January 1855. Because she had accidentally broken the required silence during afternoon prayers with a sudden cough, she had been ordered to spend a grueling session kneeling on dried peas while reciting the entire rosary, a punishment that left her knees swollen and actively bleeding. Sister Mary Collins quickly assisted her in threading the needle, their eyes exchanging a quick, silent moment of shared understanding. "Do not draw undue focus upon her weakness." Mother Catherine's voice suddenly pierced the quiet workroom, causing both young women to jump violently. She had entered without a sound, a disconcerting ability that increasingly unnerved the younger community members. Sister Josephine must learn that relentless discipline is the essential cornerstone of true religious commitment. Each one of you would be wise to internalize that lesson. By the spring of 1855, St. Mary's had firmly established a reputation for exemplary humanitarian aid. When a devastating outbreak of measles swept through the nearby lumber camps, Sister Margaret's infirmary treated scores of suffering workers regardless of their specific faith. The convent began to receive small but steady contributions from deeply grateful local families, and even skeptical Protestant preachers openly acknowledged the positive work being carried out behind those limestone barriers. Yet what no one outside the convent understood was that the life inside St. Mary's was subtly degrading in terrifying ways. The required communal meals had become increasingly silent, tense rituals, with the nuns keeping their gazes fixed solely on their bowls of watery soup or their plates of plain bread. The recreation period, once a short opportunity for quiet conversation and occasional subdued laughter, grew strained and entirely muted. Young women who had bravely crossed an ocean together, united by shared purpose and faith, now moved like hesitant shadows, perpetually careful not to attract any attention to themselves. The first truly inexplicable event occurred in April 1855, when Sister Agnes failed to appear for Matins. Her absence was instantly conspicuous. One empty space in the perfect formation of the chapel. The remaining sisters quickly exchanged silent, worried glances as Mother Catherine entered, her face utterly devoid of emotion in the dim candlelight. "Sister Agnes has been directed to aid our new mission in Minnesota," Mother Catherine announced to the stunned community at breakfast. Her tone was absolute, tolerating no challenge. Her transfer was sudden, as such profound divine summonses often must be. "We shall all pray faithfully for her ultimate success in this wholly new endeavor." Sister Bernardet's spoon clattered onto her bowl. "But, Mother," she started. "She never spoke a word to me about it, and She was instantly silenced as Mother Catherine's pale eyes locked onto her face. "Are you suggesting, Sister Bernardet, that a bride of Christ requires permission from her colleagues, rather than her divinely ordained superiors, before responding to a holy calling?" The question hung in the air, cold and sharp. "No, Mother. Forgive me." Sister Bernardet immediately lowered her gaze to her cooling porridge. No one had witnessed Sister Agnes preparing to leave, nor had she ever mentioned a transfer in her correspondence. But given the rigorous hierarchy of the convent, no one dared to openly challenge the Mother Superior's declaration further. That evening in the dormitory, several nuns observed that Sister Agnes' meager personal items, her treasured prayer book, the small wooden rosary given by her mother, the extra woolen stockings for the harsh winters, were indeed gone, as if she had purposefully packed and departed. Yet Sister Mary Collins, whose cot was positioned directly adjacent to Agnes, quietly confided to Sister Teresa Donovan during their brief, concealed moments together in the garden. Her heavy winter cloak remains hanging on its hook. Would she truly have traveled without an April, especially when destined for Minnesota? Sister Teresa glanced nervously toward the mansion windows. Perhaps she was furnished with a replacement for the journey. We must strictly avoid any further speculation, sister. 3 months later, Sister Bernardet Walsh disappeared in an identical, unexplained manner. The bishop himself has requested Sister Bernardet's assistance with a delicate administrative matter in Chicago, Mother Catherine explained. She departed before dawn to catch the earliest available train. Once more, there was no farewell, no prior notification, only a newly empty cell and a swiftly delivered explanation. This time, Sister Elizabeth offered further clarification during the nuns' work period. Sister Bernardet displayed such exceptional skill with the small children that the bishop urgently required her to help establish appropriate protocol at the new foundling home in Chicago. Her voice maintained the practiced blend of pride and devout acceptance, but Sister Mary observed that her eyes, usually so expressive, remained unsettlingly devoid of warmth as she spoke. By the subsequent winter of 1855, 3 additional nuns had purportedly been transferred to distant assignments. Each departure followed the same deeply disturbing pattern. A young nun, typically one who had been noted for her beauty or gentle disposition, would simply fail to appear one morning. Mother Catherine would then announce her new assignment, invariably to a location too remote or obscure for any practical verification. Letters sent by deeply worried family members to these alleged new postings would return months later with brief, strangely formal responses that offered minimal details of their supposed new lives. When these documents were meticulously analyzed years later by forensic experts, every single reply was confirmed to have been written by the same single individual, not by the missing sisters themselves. Sister Teresa Donovan was one of the very few possessing the fortitude to voice her concerns. Tall and physically strong from her background in farm work before taking her vows, and possessing a direct manner highly unusual in the convent environment, she had already earned Mother Catherine's displeasure for questioning the escalating severity of the penances assigned to the younger community members. It seems profoundly odd that the Holy See would demand so many transfers without providing proper, verifiable documentation, she confided in a whisper to Sister Mary Collins as they labored together in the garden during the summer of 1856, their fingers stained dark with earth as they pulled the early carrots. The garden had been significantly expanded that year, including a new, walled section dedicated entirely to medicinal herbs that Sister Margaret personally tended behind a high barrier that only she and Mother Catherine were permitted to access. And have you not noticed that it is always the youngest and most attractive who are called away? Sister Teresa continued, her Irish accent growing heavier with her rising distress. First Agnes with her glorious golden hair, then Bernardet with her beautiful singing voice, then Catherine with her perfect skin, and Josephine with her. She abruptly stopped speaking as a dark shadow fell across the garden bed. Sister Mary instantly silenced her, glancing nervously toward the convent windows, where Sister Margaret stood motionless, observing them, her thin face completely expressionless. Mother Catherine operates based on superior wisdom. We must place our absolute faith in her judgment, Sister Mary murmured quickly. The following week, Sister Teresa was gone, called to an intensive period of contemplative isolation in Montreal, was the official, succinct explanation offered at morning prayers. Sister Mary, now consumed by overwhelming dread, kept her head down and her terrifying thoughts strictly contained. That evening, as she tidied her sleeping pallet, she discovered a small piece of folded paper hidden beneath her pillow, a page torn from Sister Teresa's prayer book with a frantic message scrawled in the margin. Something is terribly wrong here. If I vanish, tell Father Ryan. The sight of her friend's familiar handwriting, the ink still quite dark, sent a violent chill through Sister Mary's entire being that had nothing to do with the cool night air seeping through the stone walls. By the year 1857, the frightening pattern had become tragically undeniable within the convent's precincts. Of the initial 20 junior nuns, only 12 now remained. The official explanations continued: special humanitarian missions, intensive spiritual retreats, urgent transfers to nursing posts during localized disease outbreaks. To the outside world, St. Mary's continued to function with apparent normalcy. Local families still brought their sick relatives to Sister Margaret's capable infirmary. Orphans still received adequate care in Sister Elizabeth's sanctuary. Sunday visitors observed nothing amiss in the solemn, silent processions of black-clad figures moving rigidly between the chapel, the garden, and the refectory. But within those silent limestone walls, terror had become a heavy, suffocating presence. The remaining nuns spoke only in hurried whispers, desperately avoided being alone, and watched with profound apprehension as their numbers steadily diminished. Mother Catherine's command grew relentlessly authoritarian. Minor breaches of the convent code now resulted in truly harsh penances, days of total self-denial, nights spent kneeling in unmoving prayer on freezing stone, and enforced public confessions of increasingly trivial personal failings. Sister Claire O'Donnell, caught with a small piece of chocolate mailed by her family, was compelled to kneel before the entire community and publicly confess to gluttony and deceit unworthy of a bride of Christ. Mother Catherine assigned her to fast for 3 full days, consuming only water and a single piece of dry bread at the evening meal. When Sister Claire eventually collapsed from sheer exhaustion during chapel prayers on the second day, it was Sister Margaret who swiftly revived her with potent-smelling salts. Her thin lips briefly curved into what several witnesses later recalled as a swift clinical smile. One particularly cold night in January 1858, Sister Mary Collins was roused by muted, chilling sounds emanating from the cell directly beside hers. Through the thin partition, she could distinctly hear Sister Rebecca Murphy weeping uncontrollably, followed by a sharp, low whisper she immediately recognized as Mother Catherine's voice. "You will accompany us now. Utter a single noise, and you will regret it severely." The muffled sound of heavy, dragging feet followed, then total silence. Sister Mary lay rigid in her narrow bed, her heart hammering so loudly she feared its sound would expose her wakefulness. The floorboards in the corridor creaked audibly. 1, 2, 3 sets of deliberate footsteps moving away from Sister Rebecca's cell. Then came a distinct sound that would forever plague Sister Mary's mind. A single muffled scream quickly cut short, immediately followed by the sound of something heavy being deliberately dragged rather than walking. The following morning, Mother Catherine formally announced that Sister Rebecca had been called to serve on a vital frontier mission in the distant Dakota Territory. The public explanation: the indigenous children there urgently require instruction, and Sister Rebecca's gentle patience with the orphans has equipped her perfectly for this high calling. Mother Catherine's pale eyes swept the refectory, pausing momentarily on Sister Mary. "We will miss her quiet spirit, but we must celebrate God's superior plan for her abilities." Sister Mary, physically shaking with consuming fear, managed to maintain a facade of composure throughout the morning prayers. Her wooden rosary beads clicked rhythmically between her trembling fingers as she mechanically recited the familiar prayers, her mind reeling with horrifying conjecture. What unspeakable fate had truly claimed Sister Rebecca? What terrible secret had swallowed all the others? That very afternoon, while performing her cleaning duties in the corridor outside Mother Catherine's private office, Sister Mary overheard a profoundly incriminating conversation. The large oak door was not quite fully closed, and voices carried clearly to where Sister Mary stood, her dust brush suddenly paralyzed in her hand. The physician confirmed that this one will command an exceptionally high value. Sister Elizabeth's typically soft voice had acquired a cold, calculating edge that Sister Mary would never have recognized had she not been eavesdropping at that precise moment. He guarantees that wealthy clients pay a premium price for those they are convinced are entirely innocent. We absolutely must be more discreet regarding the timing, Sister Margaret responded, the metallic clinking of glass, suggesting she was organizing her pharmaceutical stores as she spoke. Removing 3 in a single month will undoubtedly provoke too many questions. The bishop's personal secretary noted it in his latest correspondence. Mother Catherine's sharply dismissive laughter sent an icy jolt of horror down Sister Mary's spine. Another substantial contribution to his ongoing cathedral construction fund, and his momentary concerns will simply vanish. Furthermore, we have firmly established the required pattern. No one genuinely questions nuns being reassigned to remote frontier posts or succumbing to sudden illness during their sacred charitable duties. What about the Collins woman? Sister Margaret inquired, lowering her voice significantly. She's far too observant. I have seen her lingering near doors. A tense, endless silence followed, during which Sister Mary's frantic heart nearly ceased entirely. We shall wait our moment, Mother Catherine eventually replied, her voice lethally calm. She is too plain to fetch a high price in any case, and she maintains that persistent correspondence with her brother, the seminarian. Eliminating too many simultaneously creates critical scrutiny. Rebecca will sufficiently satisfy the doctor's demanding clientele for the time being. Sister Mary fled the area before there was any chance of discovery, her mind spinning wildly. What unspeakable thing had happened to her missing sisters? What terrifying reality had befallen Sister Rebecca just the night before? And who exactly was this doctor they spoke of so casually? The final, horrifying pieces of the puzzle began to click into a dreadful certainty in her mind. The missing nuns were universally the youngest and most physically appealing. The strange, secretive visits from wealthy, immaculately dressed patrons who privately toured the convent with Mother Catherine. The muffled, unidentifiable noises sometimes heard late at night from the permanently locked north wing. The convent's baffling, ever-increasing financial prosperity despite its supposedly humble purpose. After an entire night consumed by frantic prayer and desperate internal debate, Sister Mary reached a momentous, terrifying decision. During her routine weekly task of gathering eggs from the chicken coop, the only brief interval she was permitted outside the convent's main walls without direct supervision, she quickly slipped a hastily scrawled, damning note into the pocket of Jimmy Fletcher, the 12-year-old son of a local farmer who delivered fresh milk each morning. Jimmy's eyes widened momentarily in shock as Sister Mary's shaking hand briefly brushed his pocket. She had never before dared to speak to him directly. The rules strictly forbade casual communication with any outsiders, particularly males of any age. Please, you must deliver this note directly to Father Thomas at St. Joseph's Church in town, she whispered with desperate urgency, pressing a small silver confirmation cross into the boy's hand. The cross, a gift from her own confirmation, was the single most valuable personal item she possessed. Tell absolutely no one else. The very lives of many innocent women hang in the balance. The boy nodded soberly, his freckled face instantly grave and focused beyond his young years. Yes, sister, I swear I will. The note, which has been scrupulously preserved in the diocesan archives, read simply, something profoundly evil is occurring at St. Mary's. Nuns are disappearing. They were not sent away as claimed. I fear mortally for my life. Please send immediate help. Sister Mary Collins. The journey consumed a full day by horseback, the late winter thoroughfare shifting treacherously between sheets of ice and deep, clinging mud. He reached the bishop's manse with his cassock badly spattered, but his conviction entirely unbroken. Bishop Henny greeted him in a well-appointed study, a space significantly warmer and more opulent than Father Ryan's modest parish house. The initial focus of the conversation was dominated by the construction of Milwaukee's new St. John's Cathedral. The bishop showed off the architectural plans with visible pride, discussing the intricacies of the funding with animation. "It will be the finest cathedral west of New York," Bishop Henny declared, his German accent still evident despite decades in America. Asterisk, asterisk, a proper monument to our faith in this Protestant wilderness. Asterisk, asterisk. Father Ryan nodded appropriately, waiting for the perfect opportunity to introduce his urgent concerns. When the bishop finally inquired about the welfare of his parish, the young priest meticulously recounted his observations. The dwindling number of nuns at St. Mary's, the utterly inconsistent explanations, and finally, he produced the desperate note from Sister Mary. The bishop's expression hardened as Father Ryan spoke, his initial warmth giving way to a frosty neutrality. "These are grave accusations, Father," he stated, setting the silver cross aside without bothering to examine it closely. "Mother Catherine has accounted for every transfer to my complete satisfaction. But Your Excellency, 8 nuns have vanished in less than 3 years, Father Ryan pressed, his voice rising. No official documentation has been provided for these transfers. No one has received a single consistent correspondence from these women after they supposedly left. The frontier missions require educated women," the bishop replied with sharp finality, standing to signal the conversation was concluded. Asterisk, asterisk, I will not permit you to spread rumors that could compromise the Church's reputation in this highly sensitive Protestant region. Asterisk, asterisk, Mother Catherine has been exceedingly generous in supporting our cathedral building fund. Her spiritual leadership is beyond reproach. As the bishop steered him toward the door, he added a stern warning. Focus entirely on your parish duties, Father Ryan. Leave the administration of convents to those divinely appointed for that purpose. Father Ryan left the bishop's residence deeply discouraged, yet his determination remained firm. If the official ecclesiastical channels refused to address his concerns, he was resolved to find an alternate means of investigating the sinister disappearances at St. Mary's. The crucial opportunity presented itself in March 1858 when Bishop Henny assigned Father Ryan the task of collecting the annual financial reports from all parishes and religious institutions throughout the diocese. This official capacity provided him with a legitimate pretext to audit St. Mary's records and perhaps uncover concrete evidence of the missing nun's fate. The March winds tore through Father Ryan's heavy coat as his horse-drawn buggy approached St. Mary's. The convent appeared strangely different somehow. The garden seemed more neglected, the windows darker, despite the mild spring weather that should have drawn the nuns out for their outdoor chores. The bell tower that once rang out clearly for each divine office now sounded less frequently, its tone oddly muted. He was greeted at the door by Sister Elizabeth, whose characteristic smile appeared strained. Dark shadows beneath her eyes suggested acute sleeplessness, and her typically immaculate habit showed small signs of neglect, a missing pin, a slight discoloration on her white collar. "Father Ryan, we were not expecting you today," she said, her surprise poorly concealed. "Mother Catherine is indisposed," she continued, leading him not to the comfortable study, but to a small, frigid parlor. "She asks that you leave the diocesan forms. She will complete them by the week's end." "I'm afraid the bishop was quite clear," Father Ryan insisted, removing his coat and placing his briefcase deliberately on the table. He attempted to project an authority he did not entirely possess, acutely aware that his youth and low position in the hierarchy worked against him. Asterisk, asterisk, I am mandated to review the records personally this year. Financial irregularities have been flagged in several institutions. Asterisk, asterisk. Sister Elizabeth's strained smile vanished completely. Asterisk, asterisk, that will not be possible today. Asterisk, asterisk, our bookkeeper, Sister Margaret, is currently attending to a dying child in the infirmary. "Then I shall wait," Father Ryan replied, settling more firmly into his chair. "Or perhaps I could tour the convent while waiting. It has been some time since I've seen the recent improvements to the orphanage I've heard so much about." The emotion that briefly flashed across Sister Elizabeth's face. Was it profound fear? Deep anger? Vanished instantly. "As you wish, Father. Though I must request that you strictly avoid the North Wing. We have several serious cases of influenza housed there, and we wouldn't want you exposed." The North Wing, where Father Ryan had never been granted entry, ostensibly because it contained the nuns' private quarters. His suspicions immediately solidified. The ensuing tour revealed a convent operating far below its reported capacity. Where were the 20 orphans cited in Mother Catherine's reports to the diocese? Father Ryan counted only 7 children, all appearing thin and visibly frightened. When he tried to speak with a small girl sweeping the dormitory floor, Sister Elizabeth quickly intervened, sending the child away on a fabricated errand. The infirmary, supposedly caring for dozens of local residents, contained only 3 elderly patients, none displaying any signs of the reported influenza. Sister Margaret was nowhere to be seen, despite her alleged attendance on a dying child. Most disturbing was the clear reduction in the number of nuns. Father Ryan had celebrated Mass at St. Mary's only 3 months earlier and clearly recalled at least 15 nuns in attendance. Today he counted only 8, including Sister Elizabeth. When he inquired about specific nuns, he remembered Sister Rebecca, Sister Josephine, Sister Clare. He received the same vague responses regarding transfers and special missions. Asterisk, asterisk, and Sister Mary Collins? Asterisk, asterisk, he asked casually as they passed the laundry room, where 2 nuns silently worked at large washtubs, steam rising around their reddened hands. Sister Elizabeth's step faltered almost imperceptibly. "Sister Mary has been assigned to our mission in St. Louis. She left us last week. Her experience with the orphans made her particularly suited to the work there." Father Ryan nodded, concealing the surge of alarm. The author of the desperate warning note was now officially among the disappeared. With his suspicions now fully confirmed, he requested to see the convent's chapel before leaving. The chapel, once a model of neatness, now showed subtle signs of neglect. Dust lay on the altar rails, the candlesticks were unpolished, and the wilting flowers should have been replaced days ago. The sacred space that had once held 23 women in prayer now felt desolate, as if the very stones were aware of the great wrongness that had infiltrated St. Mary's. While Sister Elizabeth was momentarily distracted by a message from a novice, Father Ryan slipped through a side door he knew led to the residential wing. The corridor was eerily silent for mid-afternoon. Many of the cells stood empty, personal possessions gone, as though their residents had truly departed. As he turned to leave, a barely audible sound snagged his attention. Asterisk, asterisk, something between a whimper and a moan, asterisk, asterisk, emanating from behind a heavy wooden door at the far end of the corridor. The door, unlike all the others, was secured with a substantial iron lock. Father Ryan approached cautiously, straining to hear. The sound repeated, undeniably human, undeniably distressed. "Is someone there?" he whispered through the keyhole. "Do you need help?" A moment of silence, then a rough female voice responded. Father, is that you? Please help us, please." Before he could respond further, the unmistakable voice of Mother Catherine rang out directly behind him. "Father Ryan, this area is strictly cloistered. Your presence here is most inappropriate." He spun around to find Mother Catherine, flanked by Sister Margaret and a large, intimidating man he did not recognize. The man was not dressed as clergy or medical personnel, but wore the rough clothing of a laborer, with arms as thick as tree trunks and a face set in a hostile scowl. "Forgive me, Mother," Father Ryan managed, struggling to keep his voice level. I became momentarily turned around after visiting the chapel. Mother Catherine's pale eyes assessed him with cold calculation. She had visibly lost weight since his last visit, her habit hanging loosely on her frame. But her aura of authority seemed only to have intensified. This wing houses sisters under special spiritual direction. Their seclusion is essential to their devotional practice. I heard someone distinctly calling for help, Father Ryan countered, summoning his courage. You heard, sister, and in the midst of her spiritual exercises, Sister Margaret interjected smoothly. Some of our more dedicated sisters practice mortification of the flesh. Their cries can be easily misinterpreted by those unfamiliar with advanced devotional practices. Mr. Callahan will show you out. Mother Catherine nodded to the burly man. We will dispatch the financial reports to Milwaukee by the week's end. The man named Callahan stepped forward, his posture suggesting he was accustomed to enforcing Mother Catherine's will through means decidedly unspiritual. This way, Father, he said, a palpable hint of menace beneath the forced politeness. The man gripped Father Ryan's arm with unnecessary, brutal force. Father Ryan caught one final glimpse of the locked door. Who had spoken to him? What had she meant by us? How many women were being held captive behind that door? The instant his buggy cleared the convent gates, Father Ryan mercilessly whipped his horse into a full gallop, his mind racing faster than the animal's hooves. The desperate voice, the heavy locked door, the increasing number of missing nuns, the frightened children, the frightening presence of the man called Callahan, all converged to point toward a clear, organized evil at St. Mary's. This situation was now far beyond his jurisdiction as a simple parish priest. He required immediate official intervention, bypassing Bishop Henney, whom he now rightly suspected of either complicity or deliberate negligence. Father Ryan sent an urgent telegram to Archbishop John Hughes in New York. Grave concerns regarding St. Mary's Convent, Wisconsin. Suspicious disappearances of multiple nuns. Evidence of imprisonment. Possible danger to remaining sisters. Request immediate diocesan investigation. Local bishop unresponsive. Father Thomas Ryan, St. Joseph's Parish. Archbishop Hughes, known for his uncompromising, no-nonsense approach to diocesan management, responded with swift precision. Rather than notifying Bishop Henney, he immediately dispatched his personal secretary, Monsignor Patrick Kelly, to conduct a surprise inspection of St. Mary's. Monsignor Kelly arrived unannounced at the convent gates on April 17, 1858, accompanied by Father Ryan and two senior priests from neighboring parishes. The spring day was clear and mild, but as the clerical party approached St. Mary's, a heavy sense of foreboding seemed to hang over the limestone buildings. Ravens circled the bell tower, their harsh cries slicing through the morning stillness. The reception they received was immediately telling. Mother Catherine, usually perfectly composed and commanding, appeared profoundly flustered by their arrival. Her pale face was flushed with mounting fear as she recognized Monsignor Kelly's official robes and the sealed documents he carried. The convent itself appeared in disarray. Through an open window, Father Ryan glimpsed two young nuns hastily carrying armfuls of papers toward the kitchen, where the large cast-iron stove was burning fiercely despite the mild weather. The acrid odor of burning paper drifted through the courtyard. "This is highly irregular, Monsignor," Mother Catherine protested as the clerical party entered the main hall. Her voice, usually controlled and melodic, was now brittle with tension. "We have established protocols for official visitations. Bishop Henney always sends official word weeks in advance, which is precisely why Archbishop Hughes instructed me to forego such notification," Monsignor Kelly replied coolly. In his 50s, with silver hair and the weathered face of a man who had experienced both war and peace, the Monsignor projected an authority that even Mother Catherine appeared unable to directly challenge. "I have here a letter bearing the Archbishop's seal, authorizing a complete and unrestricted inspection of this institution, its records, and all its residents. I trust you will cooperate fully." Mother Catherine's eyes darted briefly to Sister Margaret. A silent communication seemed to pass between them before Mother Catherine turned back to Monsignor Kelly with a forced, tight smile. "Of course, Monsignor. St. Mary's has nothing whatsoever to conceal. However, I must absolutely insist that you respect the enclosure of our cloistered sisters. Some are engaged in spiritual exercises that cannot be interrupted." "My authority extends to all areas of this convent, Mother Catherine," Monsignor Kelly replied, unfurling the Archbishop's official letter and holding it before her. "No exceptions." What followed was a day-long, grueling investigation that would later be detailed in Monsignor Kelly's 40-page report as unveiling a tableau of horrors unprecedented in the modern church. The inspection team immediately split up, with Father Ryan leading Monsignor Kelly directly to the ominous locked door in the residential wing, while the other priests began the uncomfortable process of interviewing the visible nuns and scrutinizing the financial records. As they approached the north wing, they found Sister Elizabeth blocking the corridor. Her usually pleasant face set in uncharacteristic, fierce determination. "Mother Catherine has strictly forbidden entrance to this area, Monsignor. We have sisters in spiritual retreat." "Sister Elizabeth," Monsignor Kelly said gently but with absolute firmness, "I speak with the authority of Archbishop Hughes. Open the door, or I shall be forced to consider you in violation of your solemn vow of obedience." Sister Elizabeth's composure finally shattered. "You don't understand what you're doing," she whispered, her voice suddenly desperate and ragged. "He will be most displeased." "He?" Father Ryan questioned. "Do you mean Bishop Henny?" Sister Elizabeth merely shook her head, her eyes darting nervously toward the windows as if expecting someone sinister to suddenly appear. After a moment of painful hesitation, she finally stepped aside. The locked door, when finally breached under the threat of immediate ecclesiastical censure, revealed a profoundly shocking scene. 5 nuns, including the missing Sister Rebecca, were confined in what had clearly once been a storage room. The space, perhaps 15 feet square, contained only a chamber pot in the corner and thin, inadequate pallets on the stone floor. The single high window had been entirely boarded over, leaving the room in near total darkness, save for the light now streaming in through the open door. The women were deathly pale, severely malnourished, and showed clear signs of physical trauma. Their habits were torn and soiled, their faces gaunt with starvation and terror. One, later identified as Sister Josephine Brady, was heavily pregnant, her swollen belly incongruous against her thin, frail limbs. The stench of unwashed bodies and human waste was overwhelmingly sickening. Father Ryan turned away momentarily, fighting the urge to vomit, while Monsignor Kelly silently crossed himself in profound horror. "In the name of all that is holy," the Monsignor whispered, "what exactly has transpired here?" Sister Rebecca, once a robust woman quick to smile, now a skeletal figure with vacant hollow eyes, struggled to stand. "Father Ryan," she managed, her voice cracked from disuse or screaming. "You came back," she whispered, as Father Ryan helped her to a chair hastily brought from a corridor. "They're preparing us for the doctor, for the house in Chicago." "What doctor? What house in Chicago?" Monsignor Kelly asked gently, kneeling beside her despite his age and dignity. "Dr. Matthews," Sister Rebecca replied, her voice dropping to a raw whisper. "He comes to examine us to see which ones are suitable." She closed her eyes, trembling violently. "The men pay more for nuns, for brides of Christ. That's what Mother Catherine tells them." While Father Ryan and Monsignor Kelly tended to the imprisoned nuns, ensuring they received immediate water, nourishment, and medical assessment, the other priests made equally chilling discoveries elsewhere in the convent. In Sister Margaret's private quarters, accessible only through a cleverly hidden door in the infirmary. They found shelves meticulously lined with highly suspicious medicines, laudanum, chloroform, and other powerful sedatives typically used for rendering patients unconscious. A leather-bound journal meticulously detailed treatments administered to various nuns, complete with clinical notes about their physiological responses and their suitability for transportation. Simultaneously, the priests examining the financial records uncovered alarming and systematic discrepancies. While the convent officially reported minimal income for meager donations and manual labor, its account showed regular substantial deposits, far more money than a remote frontier convent could possibly generate legitimately. Most disturbing were coded entries referring to packages delivered and special commissions completed, each corresponding directly to the disappearance of a nun. Transferred Sister Agnes O'Connor for May 1855. Commission $400. Package delivered to Chicago establishment. Condition excellent. Asterisk. Sister Teresa Donovan unsuitable for transfer due to resistance. Terminated November 1856. No commission. Asterisk. As the investigation deepened, a pattern of horrific abuse and sexual exploitation emerged through patient, gentle questioning of the deeply traumatized nuns. Monsignor Kelly painstakingly pieced together the shattering truth. Mother Catherine, Sister Elizabeth, and Sister Margaret were not legitimate religious leaders at all, but highly organized impostors who had infiltrated the Catholic system years earlier. Sister Claire O'Donnell, one of the rescued nuns, provided crucial, damning testimony once she felt secure enough to speak. "I overheard them arguing one night," she whispered, clutching a blanket tightly around her shoulders despite the room's warmth. Mother Catherine was arguing with Sister Margaret about their past. She called her Catherine, said they'd come too far to risk exposure now, that they'd changed identities before and could do it again if necessary. The real Mother Catherine Murphy had died shortly after arriving in Wisconsin, poisoned, according to subsequent testimony from Sister Margaret's former assistant in the infirmary. She added something to Mother Catherine's evening tea. The young nun testified. The original Mother Catherine began vomiting blood that very night. Sister Margaret diagnosed it as consumption and isolated her. None of us were allowed to attend her in her final days. The three senior impostors had then systematically seized control of the convent, establishing covert connections with a network of so-called houses of charity across the Midwest that were, in horrifying reality, brothels catering to wealthy clients with specific, depraved preferences. Young nuns who caught their eye, particularly those noted for their beauty, demonstrable innocence, or gentle nature, were prepared for a terrible fate. First came complete isolation through increasingly severe penances for fabricated infractions, followed by drugging, often with laudanum, from Sister Margaret's medical supplies. The selected nuns would be violated within the convent itself by paying benefactors, wealthy men from Chicago, Milwaukee, and as far away as St. Louis, who paid premium prices for the opportunity to defile brides of Christ. They would arrive after Compline when the convent was required to be silent, Sister Rebecca explained, her voice disturbingly flat, as if detachment were the only possible way to recount such horrors. Men in fine clothes, smelling of strong cologne and whiskey. Mother Catherine would lead them directly to the north wing where we were kept. They paid extra to have us wear our habits during the violation. Those who became pregnant, like Sister Josephine, were kept strictly isolated until delivery, after which they would be transported to brothels in Chicago or St. Louis, where they would be forced into prostitution. Their religious background and forced pregnancy were actively marketed as special attractions for depraved patrons. Many died within a few years from disease or brutal abuse. Sister Margaret examined us regularly. Sister Rebecca continued. She kept meticulous records of our monthly cycles, If we missed our bleeding, she would laugh and tell Mother Catherine we'd be especially valuable now. The men paid significantly more for those carrying children. The orphanage served as both a perfect cover and an additional source of victims. Older girls approaching puberty would suddenly be adopted by generous benefactors. In reality, sold to the same trafficking network of brothels. Boys were indeed placed with families, but typically as unpaid farm laborers, with Mother Catherine collecting substantial placement fees. Most horrifying were the fates of those who resisted too forcefully or threatened to expose the entire operation. Sister Teresa Donovan, who had openly questioned the disappearances, had not been sent to Montreal as claimed. According to Sister Rebecca's testimony, Teresa had been held in the locked room for weeks, repeatedly assaulted, and when her spirit remained unbroken, she was strangled by the man called Callahan. Her body, along with the remains of at least 3 other nuns who had similarly resisted, lay buried in unmarked graves in the convent's extensive vegetable garden. Mother Catherine made us watch, Sister Claire sobbed, tears streaming down her face. She said it was a necessary lesson in obedience. Sister Teresa fought until the very end. She was praying the rosary even as Callahan tightened the rope around her neck. As evening descended on that fateful April day, Monsignor Kelly ordered the immediate and complete closure of St. Mary's Convent. The surviving nuns were quickly moved to a place of safety. Local civil authorities were notified, and guards were posted to prevent anyone from fleeing or removing further evidence. Mother Catherine, Sister Elizabeth, and Sister Margaret were placed under immediate ecclesiastical arrest, confined to their cells under watch until civil authorities could formally take custody. "I was merely following orders," Sister Elizabeth whimpered as she was led to her cell. Mother Catherine assured me it was God's will, that the money was needed for the Church's greater glory. Mother Catherine maintained a chilling, stone-faced silence, her pale eyes revealing nothing of her inner thoughts as the door closed on her temporary confinement. Only Sister Margaret showed any emotion, a strange, knowing half-smile playing at her thin lips as she was escorted away. "You understand nothing of what you've actually discovered," she told Monsignor Kelly. "We serve a higher purpose than you can possibly imagine." However, the Church's attempt to handle the matter discreetly soon unraveled entirely. Mr. Callahan, the burly enforcer, who had been absent during the inspection, returned after nightfall. Finding the convent under guard, he immediately fled toward Chicago, where he apparently warned his associates. By the time local sheriffs arrived the following morning with official arrest warrants, Mother Catherine and Sister Margaret had somehow escaped their confined quarters. Only Sister Elizabeth remained, found kneeling in the chapel in a state of catatonic shock. "The window was still locked from inside," reported the priest who had been guarding Mother Catherine's room. "The door showed no signs of forced exit. It's as if she vanished into thin air." More likely, the convent's long history had provided secret passages unknown even to the Church authorities. Escape routes perhaps dating back to the building's origins as a lumber baron's mansion, where illicit meetings and emergency departures might have been necessary in the volatile frontier days. The subsequent civil investigation uncovered the full, shocking extent of the operation. Financial records seized from Mother Catherine's hidden safe revealed transactions totaling over $100,000, equivalent to approximately $3 million today. Over the 8 years of the operation, coded ledgers identified 23 nuns and 17 orphan girls who had been systematically trafficked to brothels across the Midwest. Correspondence with business partners in Chicago, St. Louis, and even New Orleans detailed the specialized services offered and the premium prices commanded. A genuine sister of charity, untouched before our establishment. Minimum $300. Special requests habit, religious implements, additional $50 per session. Pregnant sisters command $500 for exclusive patrons. asterisk. Most damning was a small leather notebook discovered sewn into Sister Elizabeth's mattress. The notebook contained precise dates, names, and horrific details of the fates of each disappeared nun. Some entries were clinically detached. Sister Agnes delivered to Chicago Operation September 1855, valued at $400. Others revealed the writer's disturbing personal pleasure in the suffering inflicted. Asterisk. Sister Teresa fought magnificently. Callahan enjoyed subduing her. Buried east corner of Beanfield, November 1856, asterisk. The notebook also contained multiple references to the doctor. Evidently Dr. William Matthews, a once-respected physician from Chicago whose career had ended in scandal over allegations of inappropriate conduct with female patients. According to the notebook, Dr. Matthews provided medical examinations of the nuns, certifying their health and, most disturbingly, their virginity, a feature that significantly increased their value to the brothels. Dr. Matthews' notebook entry continued the chilling clinical assessment of the nuns' value. Asterisk. Dr. M confirms Sister Rebecca suitable for premium placement. Recommends maximum usage before transfer to ensure appropriate behavior in Chicago establishment. Asterisk. The investigation extended to the convent grounds where, guided by the notebook's cryptic references, authorities excavated several areas of the vegetable garden. There, they tragically found the remains of 4 nuns buried in shallow graves among the bean plants and herbs. Forensic examination, while primitive by modern standards, was thorough for the time, confirming Sister Rebecca's account. These women had died by strangulation. Their bodies were disposed of without any ceremony or marker. One victim, identified as Sister Mary Collins by a small medallion of St. Bridget found with the remains, appeared to have been buried far more recently than the others. The soil over her grave was barely settled, suggesting she had been killed just before or during Father Ryan's fateful visit, perhaps immediately after delivering the note that ultimately led to the convent exposure. Sister Elizabeth Foster, born Margaret Wilson, was the only one of the 3 leaders to face any justice. Found mentally unfit to stand trial, she was committed to the Wisconsin State Asylum, where she died in 1863, having never spoken another word. Her medical records describe her as catatonic except during the night hours, when she screams about the master coming to punish her betrayal. Mother Catherine Murphy, real name unknown, and Sister Margaret Clark, identified later as Catherine Donovan, no relation to the murdered Sister Teresa, disappeared completely. Unconfirmed reports placed them operating similar schemes with young women immigrants in New Orleans and then Havana, but they were never apprehended. A nationwide alert distributed their descriptions to law enforcement agencies across the country. Mother Catherine, approximately 45 years of age, 5 feet 8 inches tall, blue eyes, graying brown hair, speaks with slight Boston accent, carries herself with unusual authority. Sister Margaret, approximately 40 years of age, 5 feet 10 inches tall, very thin build, dark eyes, black hair with premature gray streaks, speaks precisely, knowledgeable of medical terminology. Despite these detailed descriptions and a substantial reward offered by both civil authorities and the church, the women Mother Catherine Murphy and Sister Margaret Clark seemed to simply vanish into America's vast frontier. Occasional unsubstantiated reports would surface. 2 women matching their descriptions, seen boarding a steamboat in New Orleans or attempting to establish a ladies' finishing school in Havana. But by the time authorities investigated, the women would invariably be gone. Mr. Callahan, identified as James Callahan of Chicago, was captured 6 months later in a brothel raid and subsequently hung for the murder of a police officer during his arrest. Before his execution, he confirmed many details of the St. Mary's operation, though he claimed total ignorance of the leaders' whereabouts. They planned for this, he told the prison chaplain the night before his execution. Mother Catherine always said they had escaped routes prepared, new identities waiting. They'd done it before, he claimed, changed their skins like snakes when necessary. When pressed about the cryptic references to the master found in Sister Elizabeth's writings, Callahan became violently agitated. Don't ask about him, he warned. He's not someone you want to know, not someone you want knowing you. Whether this master was a simple religious delusion, a terrifying code name for a powerful, high-ranking accomplice, or something else entirely remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the St. Mary's case. No further documentation ever established his identity or confirmed his existence beyond these unsettling, cryptic references. The Church moved quickly, decisively, to contain the explosive scandal. Bishop Henney was quietly removed to a monastery in Europe, where he spent his remaining years in what church documents vaguely described as prayerful reflection on his administrative failings. His personal correspondence, however, suggests a man haunted by something far deeper than mere negligence. The blood of those poor women cries out to heaven, he wrote to a fellow bishop in 1860. I cannot sleep for hearing their voices. Mother Catherine assured me the funds were for missionary work. I never questioned. God forgive me. I never questioned. The convent buildings themselves were summarily demolished, the land sold, and the proceeds were used to establish a legitimate orphanage in Milwaukee. No mention was ever made in official church communications of the bodies discovered on the grounds or the horrific crimes committed within those walls. The site was quietly deconsecrated in a private ceremony attended only by Monsignor Kelly and Archbishop Hughes, with absolutely no public announcement. The surviving nuns were quickly dispersed to convents across the country, each required to sign confidentiality agreements that stipulated excommunication if they ever spoke of what had occurred at St. Mary's. Most lived out their lives in silent obedience, their trauma unaddressed, their profound suffering unacknowledged. Sister Josephine Brady gave birth to a daughter 2 months after a rescue, despite her desperate pleas to keep the child. Church authorities placed the infant with a Catholic family in Pennsylvania with strict instructions that the circumstances of her birth remain a closely guarded secret. This cruel separation severely compounded Sister Josephine's trauma, and historical records indicate she tragically died by suicide in 1861, leaving behind a letter that read simply, I cannot forget. I cannot forgive. Not them, not the church, not myself. May God have mercy on us all. Sister Rebecca Murphy became an unlikely, powerful voice for necessary reform within the church. Rejecting the imposed silence, she left religious life and, using the name Rachel Martin to avoid church censure, published an anonymous account titled The Dark Convent in 1865. Though the book was universally denounced by Catholic authorities as Protestant propaganda and quickly suppressed, surviving copies reveal a meticulously detailed account that aligns precisely with the official investigation records. In the book's stark conclusion, she wrote, what happened at St. Mary's was not merely the work of 3 evil women who infiltrated holy orders. It was enabled by a system that values silence over truth, institution over individual, reputation over justice. Until the Church confronts this fundamental flaw, there will be other St. Mary's, other victims, other crimes hidden behind sacred walls. The suppression of the Dark Convent was swift and nearly complete. Rachel Martin herself disappeared from the public record after 1866. Some evidence suggests she relocated to California, where she established a home for women in difficult circumstances, an early form of shelter for abuse victims. Father Thomas Ryan, whose persistence and moral courage had uncovered the horror, found himself swiftly reassigned to a remote parish in northern Minnesota. His personal journal, discovered after his death in 1886, reveals his ongoing struggle. 28 years since St. Mary's, and still the Church keeps silent. If the Church will not speak for them, then I pray that someday someone will find this account and remember them. Remember Sister Agnes, Sister Bernadette, Sister Teresa, and all the others whose names deserve to be spoken, whose suffering deserves acknowledgement, whose lives mattered. The aftermath of the St. Mary's tragedy extended far beyond Wisconsin. The operation's exposure led to increased scrutiny of Catholic institutions throughout the Midwest. In Chicago, police raids on houses of charity. In late 1858, freed 9 former nuns and 13 young women. Ledgers seized during the raids implicated several prominent Chicago businessmen and politicians. Yet the cases mysteriously collapsed before reaching trial. In St. Louis, Monsignor Kelly's attempt to follow leads ended when he was severely beaten and warned to return to New York. His private correspondence, unsealed in 1950, revealed his fear. I believe we have uncovered merely the visible portion of a much larger evil. I fear that powerful forces have determined that this matter shall proceed no further. The most profound consequences fell upon the survivors. Sister Claire O'Donnell developed what modern psychiatry would recognize as severe post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Sister and Sullivan, however, channeled her trauma into advocacy, quietly establishing informal support networks for nuns who had suffered abuse, writing, "We must distinguish between the divine institution and its flawed human stewards. Our task now is to ensure that the garments cannot so easily be stolen again." The official investigation acknowledged 23 nuns and 17 orphan girls trafficked or murdered. But Sister Elizabeth's notebook referred to additional rural acquisitions, young women abducted from isolated farms. Of the 23 vanished nuns, only 9 were definitively located. What became of the other 14 remains unknown. The most enduring mystery, the fate of Mother Catherine Murphy and Sister Margaret Clark, received its final, chilling chapter in 1912. Workers renovating an abandoned mansion in Veracruz, Mexico, discovered a hidden room containing the mummified remains of 2 elderly women. They had apparently died simultaneously around 1880 from poison. Among their possessions was a small golden locket containing a miniature painted image of St. Mary's Convent. A journal detailing their continued operations in Mexico contained the final cryptic entry: "He comes tonight. We have failed him for the last time." The legacy of St. Mary's established a pattern of institutional response to abuse, limited accountability, protection of higher authorities, relocation and silencing of survivors, and a swift return to institutional normalcy. Today, the physical traces of St. Mary's Convent have been systematically erased. In 2018, during construction near the former convent grounds, workers uncovered a small metal box containing a rosary, a folded habit veil, and a handwritten list of names, 23 in total, with the simple inscription, "Remember us." The county officials turned these items over to the diocesan archives, where they reportedly remain uncatalogued and inaccessible to researchers. However, the family of Jimmy Fletcher, the farm boy who delivered Sister Mary Collins's note, established their own enduring memorial. For 5 generations, they have maintained a small shelf containing a silver cross and a handwritten list of the nuns' names. As the current patriarch, Robert Fletcher, said in 2020, he said, "Sometimes the truth gets buried, but that doesn't make it any less true. Those women lived. They suffered. They mattered." What remains undeniable is that between 1854 and 1862, within the supposedly sacred confines of a Wisconsin convent, human evil reached extraordinary depths. The true lasting horror of St. Mary's lies not merely in what happened within those limestone walls, but how easily it was deliberately erased from history. The final, essential plea echoing across the decades remains: remember Sister Agnes, Sister Bernadette, Sister Teresa, and all the others. Remember that they lived, that they suffered, and that their suffering mattered.